is in my life, so I hustle.
What's up everyone, and welcome to IT Hustle. We'll be continuing the series exploring the Blue Team Field Manual. In the last video, we got into resetting passwords via the command line. In this video, we're going to have some fun with the host file. So without further ado, let's get it. So from the text, we have the CLI syntax to flush the DNS and NetBIOS resolving caches, how to check the location of the host file on the local machine, and how to test any changes made to the host file. So let's head on over to the lab and check that out. Okay, in the first example, we're clearing the local DNS cache. So we'll pull up the command prompt and type in ipconfig /flush DNS. So let's copy that here. And we successfully flushed the DNS resolver cache. So the host file functions as the first step in DNS resolution on machines. Simply put, if the requested domain's IP address is not on file, it goes through a process to query for and obtain the correct domain to IP mapping for the domain in question. We can see how that process works with DNS with a diagram provided from Cloudflare. Let's pull that up. Okay, so technically the machine will check its local cache and host file for example.com. If it's not found, then it'll begin the process shown here. So step 1, it'll query the resolver for example.com, and then once it gets to the DNS resolver here, it will check its local cache, and if the entry is not known on the DNS resolver, step 2, it will query the root server over here. So then in step 3, the root server will pull the top level domain name servers for .com, then it returns the top level domain name servers for .com to the resolver. Step 3. So now the resolver, step 4, will query the top level domain name servers for example.com over here. And then the TLD returns the name servers for example.com back to the resolver. So then again, the resolver will take that information and it'll query the name servers for example.com and then the name servers for example.com will return the DNS record for example.com to the resolver, so back here, and it'll give it its domain to IP mapping. So then the resolver will take that information and then pass it back up to the machine that was looking for the website example.com, and now that machine can navigate to example.com. Additionally, the information is stored in the machine's local cache for X amount of time. In the next example, we'll see how to clear the NetBIOS cache. Note this is legacy, but it still might be out there in some setups. So we'll come over here. We have mbt stat space -r. So let's copy that. And we successfully purged the NetBIOS cache. In the next example, we'll see how to check the database path for the machine's local host file. So we're going to run reg space query space hklm, so hkey local machine /system /current control set /services /tcp ip /parameters space /f space database path. So let's copy that. Gonna clear the screen, paste that in there. Okay, so here we see that the path is system root, system32 drivers, etc. System root is usually like C Windows, and then system32 drivers, etc. So this is the default location on Windows machines, but let's say you're having DNS resolution issues due to a DNS poisoning attack. You start looking in the default location, you know, system root, system32 drivers, etc., right? And the entries for the malicious domain are not there. You don't see where the redirects are happening. So checking the database path to see what the machine is actually using for the host file can come in handy, because your attacker could be clever or tricky enough to move it somewhere else. Okay, so in the last example, we'll see how to add a malicious or unwanted domain to the host file and route it to the local host. I like to call it the poor man's sinkhole. So right down here, we're just going to echo the information into the host file instead of editing it manually. Excuse me for that. And we're going to pick on Netflix because everybody loves Netflix. So I'm going to close the command prompt actually and reopen it as an administrator so we don't have any issues. All right. And I'm just going to copy the syntax, echo space 127.0.0.1. You know, that's the loopback address for the NIC card on the machine. Then we put in the domain in question, netflix.com, and then we're going to append that information into system root, C, Windows, system32, drivers, etc. hosts. So copy that, paste that in here. All right, so that's been done. So now let's test it. So the way we test it, let's ping netflix.com. And it's resolving to the local host. Now we know that's not Netflix's actual IP address, but we've successfully redirected that. So we can test that, pulling up the browser. We can go to netflix.com. How come we can get there? Because it remembers it. So go ahead and flush the DNS, because it's in its local cache. How to get there. I'm gonna close the browser, reopen it, and now let's try that again. Yeah, that shouldn't be happening, so let's figure that out. Okay, so I also had to add an entry for www.netflix.com. That's why it still worked. So once I added that, and here I'll show you. So once I echoed www.netflix.com in there, and that's also now resolving to the local host. So now when we go there and pull that up, it leads absolutely nowhere. That's it for this video. We saw how to clear the local DNS and NetBIOS caches on a machine. Had a high-level overview on how DNS works and how we can manipulate the host file to serve our security needs. So, in summary, the host file on a computer is a plain text configuration file that plays a pivotal role in translating host names to IP addresses. It serves as the initial layer of DNS resolution, and in the earlier examples, we utilized this functionality to redirect malicious traffic to a virtual black hole. In the next video, we'll get into using AppLocker. All resources in this video will be linked in the description. If you haven't already and digging the content, please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.
I want the finer things in my life, so I hustle.